it keeps her on top of her
You
game.
know, in license law, it tells you that you have to stay on top of your business. And one way to stay on top of the business is to take education and remain informed. We've had, I've been doing this 36 years. Last year in August, well, July actually, began the largest change that we as a whole have really ever seen, probably. And I'm old, so I don't like a lot of it myself. But if I want to keep going, I have to do it. And I have to learn how to do it. And I have to be comfortable doing it. You guys are going to grow up with it, so it should be second nature to you. But it is not second nature to me, and I will be the first to tell you that.
Are you talking about agency?
Agency, how commission's paid. Now you've got one more item that's becoming a negotiable item, where it wasn't really before. It was just there. Even though we negotiated it, quote unquote, there was no listing versus buying agent being compensated. I got an offer last night on I have a $474,000 listing. The buying agent asked for compensation, total amount of compensation. The buyer's offer on a $474,000 listing was $420,000. Now that's a huge deficit, a huge deficit. And so I talked to the seller and I said, there's only two things on here we can negotiate. The rest of the offer was solid, was really solid. Good buyer, good lender, no other caca on it, just two things, price and that buyer agent commission. Where do you want to get more money? There's two places we can do it. So I said, keep in mind that we want a good agent on the other side of the transaction. We want somebody who's good at what they do, who knows their client, who's willing to work with us, isn't going to do a lot of pushback and complaining, because believe me, you will run into them. And we had a good agent. So my opinion is, let's don't compensate her. I mean, let's don't, cut her commission, leave that in place. Let's do something with the price. So he said, do you care if we talk about it and think about it and I'll get back to you? I said, no, that's fine. That's fine. That's just my opinion. You can do what you want. I mean, I'll tell the seller every time, you have to be happy in the end. After you make that decision, there's no going back. If you say, cut the purchase price by $40,000 and then 24 hours later it's like, what the hell did we just do? You can't go backwards. So let's, go where you want to be and let them come back to us now. So that's what we did. And he came back at a pretty reasonable offer. We were going to reduce it anyway next week a little bit. So we came back pretty good, and I'm pretty sure we'll get it worked out. But you got to go back and forth with it. It's not your house you're selling, and it's not your house you're buying. You are just this guy in the middle who's trying to help somebody see the light of day, when quite often they don't want to. They dig their heels in. And I will tell you, on a purchase agreement, and I think I've told you this, when I get a purchase agreement on my listing, the last thing I tell them is the purchase price, the very last thing. I go over the entire contract. I say, we got a really good buyer here, we got a good lender here, they're, got money they're putting down. Go through the whole contract, point out all the good parts, and then you get to the bad news. And by then it's not such bad news, but I always do price last. I learned that the very first broker I was ever with, he said, do price last. And it does work. It does work.
It makes them listen to an offer that they might not have been interested
Well,
in.
when you sit down with the seller, all they ever want to know is how much they're going to get for their house. So kind of hold that like that little carrot out there, leave it for them. So it's a dialogue between two people, and hopefully you come to a reasonable conclusion that both parties can be happy with. Yeah, and sometimes you are the one who's not happy, but don't say so. Just keep your mouth shut. The less said, the better. Skillful negotiation with people really will add more commission to your life, will add more business to your life, because you'll get the reputation of being a really good agent at negotiating and getting somebody what they're comfortable with in the end. And we negotiate all the time. We negotiate with our spouses. We negotiate with our kids. Who has kids? You're always negotiating with your kids. And quite often we negotiate with God. I mean, I love Jelly Roll's song, I only talk to God when I need a favor. That is, he's negotiating with God when he does that. And we all do it. At least I do it. Let's see here. So we are in an emotional business, very emotional business. It's emotional for us because this is how we earn a living. That's our big emotion. Sometimes your client, Steve will tell you, he helped me with one of my clients, which we refer to her as the crazy lady. And she's been a challenge, hasn't she?
She's different,
Yeah, she's different.
Not a bad person at all, just loves to talk, long messages about nothing.
Who is this? Oh, we're not giving names.
Oh, no. But, I find myself, in fact, my mistake, the other day, she was ranting about something, and let's just call her Sue. I said, you know what, Sue, you're on my last nerve. And it just came out. It's because okay, I'm really done here, because I explained it like 15 times, and 15 times it came back to me, and it wasn't at all what I had just explained. It's like, stop talking and listen for 1 minute, just 1 minute, okay? But, we get short too, and I did. And I thought, I better stop now. We had the conversation about what my next step was going to be, and it wouldn't have ended well. But it helps to talk to somebody else. It really does. And we talk a lot among ourselves. You vent. I can vent with my friends who aren't in real estate, and they look at me like deer in the headlights, like, but you can vent in here, and everybody understands what you're talking about. So to be a successful negotiator, you need to understand how we determine what your client's wants and needs are. Always determine what their wants and needs are. Sometimes I'll have a buyer take a piece of paper if they say, well, we're pre-approved to $400,000 or we're pre-approved to $150,000. It's like, first question is, what do you want to spend? Just because you're approved over there doesn't mean you want to spend that. Where's your comfort level? Where do we need to focus and stay? The second thing I'll say, what's your need and what's your want? Make a list, your positives and your negatives. I just did it to a couple of people, and the husband and wife were like, I don't think you guys are on the same plane here. And so I said to them, I gave them each a piece of paper, and I said, write down what you want. So I know, because I feel like I'm playing ping pong with these people. Write down what you want. Write down what's important to you. What was important to him was, when he retires, he wants his house paid for. What's important to her was, you're going to laugh, she had two things. Garage had to have a window, and she did not want a corner window in a kitchen. Really? That's what was important to her. Weird. Yeah, well, it gets odder sometimes. But I had them write it down. Make a list. And then make a list and tell me what you can live without if you have to. Can you live without a basement? No. Okay, then we're not taking the basement off the list. Can you live without a 2-car garage? Yes, as long as it has additional parking beside the garage. Okay, we can take the 2-car garage off the list. That helps you figure it out. And price is the other thing. Theoretically, the lenders will say, it costs about $10 a month for every $1,000 that you raise your purchase price. That's a rough number, but by the time they pay interest and taxes and insurance on it, it's probably $10 to $12 a month. So if you raised your purchase price from $145 to $150, what does that mean in a payment to your client? Sometimes if you break it down and put it in small little bites, it makes it much more palatable, and then they can work with it. There's a lot of little things that you can do. On our contracts to purchase, one of the things I'm going to hand out to you guys is this. Steve, you want to pass these out? Is this pending progress, important dates to remember? Because you talk about negotiation and things that are important. And I think I talked about this when I taught that last class on the taught agency. I talked about this form. I don't think, not everybody was in that class. This is in dot loop. This is a Cressy doc because it's one of ours. It's not in the NAR docs. But the devil's in the details in this business. 100%. Did you get one, Steve?
No, I know what I know what they are.
Oh, he can have mine too.
No big deal.
So this is in Cressy docs, and until you get acclimated to the contracts and get used to using all the contracts and get using everything, I would suggest you use this. If you saw one of my files, this is all over the front of my file. I write it down all the time because you get 5, 6, and 7 transactions going, and everybody has a different date. Everybody has a different price. Everybody has a different title company. You haven't lived till you've called the wrong title company about a file to talk to somebody. They're like, well, we don't have that file. But when's your earnest money due? Has it come in? When's the loan application due? When's the loan approval due? Homeowners insurance, have they made that phone call? First inspection response, when is that due? Second response, appraisal value, if you know and if they let you know that. And then any repairs and utility changes or anything like that. The reason I love this sheet is if you miss the loan application date, say you have 5 business days down there for loan application, and it's day 10 and your buyer hasn't gone yet, you're technically out of contract. Technically, you're out of contract because these are all little contingencies in your contract. The big one is the inspection response. So if you get a contract today on the 9th of July, and you have 15 days to make sure those inspections are done and the buyer responds to it, day 1 is tomorrow. It's always the day after the contract is agreed to. So let's say you get a purchase agreement today on your listing, and your seller chews it over and signs it tomorrow morning. Hi there. Here, you can have one. Have this one. Let's say your seller chews it over and responds tomorrow morning on the 10th. Now 11 is your first day. It's always the day after everybody's agreed to everything. The very first number I put on anything at the top of my file or a piece of paper where I know where it is, or in my phone, however you guys want to do it, is I put day 1, 7/11 plus 15 equals that end date. Because you get past that end date and you haven't responded to your inspections, read the contract. It says the contract is deemable, that you're accepting it in its as-is condition because you missed that date. And believe you me, it has happened. It's happened to people in this office. They get one 24-hour period past their date, and as the buyer's agent or the listing agent in the transaction, I can say to you, you missed your date. Sometimes people are waiting for that to happen. Yes, they are. Sometimes sellers are waiting for that to happen because they have a backup offer that might be better. So if there is any date you pay attention to, please pay attention to that date. We had one agent who it cost him more than the commission he would have made on that sale because he missed that date. You don't want to be that agent. I had to buy a dishwasher. That's how I know that that date's really important because I don't ever plan to buy a dishwasher again. So the first response to any negotiation is emotional. It's emotional on our part. It's emotional on the buyer's part. It's emotional on the seller's part. Because everybody has a vested interest in it. Your emotion you need to keep out of it if you can. And like I said, it's not always easy, and it's not always easy to keep your mouth shut. We had an agent in class one time that all he did was talk, and I finally said, you know, you're not going to make it in this business because you have to keep your mouth shut. You really do. You might want to spout about something, but nobody wants to hear it. So you got to practice keeping a level head. It's up to us to keep the level head. It's up to us to keep the emotion at an even keel. It's up to us to be the voice of reason in a transaction. When you can look at it and you can see a lot of times, just like the one I got, I can see where it's going the price was way off of where they wanted to be, and I knew where they wanted to be. I knew what they wanted to walk away with, and we were a long way away from that. And it was more about, let's just tame it down a little bit, tame it down a little bit, tame it down a little bit, and say, what can you live with? You know, where is it that we can reach a level playing field here? And it was their decision. It wasn't my decision. All I did was suggest that we work at the price and not the commission, but that was that. So the second approach is a rational approach. That means using logic, objective reasoning, gathering thorough information to make a decision, aiming to achieve the best possible outcome. Steve, what do I tell you to do all the time?
Snoop.
Snoop. 100%. Tell them what you found when you snooped that one time.
Yeah, we were going to look at a house last week, the buyer and myself, and I said, something's not adding up here. And she said, did you snoop? And I said, I'm on my way. I went and pulled a tax card and some other stuff, and I found out the lot size was wrong on the MLS. I found that out. And the agent didn't realize it. So I brought that to her attention, and everything was it, but just didn't make sense. But, yeah, I try to look at a lot of things before I go into a property, and I'm going with my buyer and that. Pam's been my mentor. I've worked with her on a few things this year. It's been really beneficial. I'm gonna tell you what, guys, it's all incremental. You think you're gonna get it right away, and you don't. I'm already so much better with customers now when we go to see houses and things like that. Because when I keep my mouth shut and I listen to what they have to say, and, you know, it's nice to be able to point out and just say, you know, did you look at that foundation? Does that look like water up there? Yeah. You know, you can look at that type of stuff, and so you gotta think about that, and you just point little things out here and there.
Yeah. When I say snoop, so you pull up something on MLS, a new listing, and you get all excited because you think, oh my gosh, this is perfect for my buyer. First thing I do is check its past history. I want to see what the past history is. And that's H on the MLS. There's a toolbar up there that the first letter is D for documents, the second one is H for history, the third one is M for map. If you don't know where something is, map it, you'll find it. Like I was supposed to show a listing in Middlebury. It's like, okay, I kind of know where that is, but I mapped it anyway. So I look at the past history. I looked at past history last night for one, and it was the first time I've never found one in past history. It had a 588 MLS number, and it was so old. So it wasn't in there anymore. But you can find the past history, and a lot of times you can see the past like 2 or 3 sales. So let's say there's an estate right now that I'm going to show down on the south side, and there's no seller's disclosure to it. Well, you don't have to have a seller's disclosure if it's in an estate. That's not required for an estate, but it's kind of a courtesy thing to put one out there. So there's no seller's disclosure. So I went to its past history, and it had 3 previous sales, and I pulled up all 3 of the previous sales, trying to find a seller's disclosure that told me how old the roof was. That's all I was looking for. And I did find it 2 previous sales ago, how old the roof was. So now I have a point of knowledge where I can come to this transaction. And so I printed out the past sales because a lot of times maybe the current listing will say new carpet, new windows, remodel kitchen, basement finished. And you go back to the one previous sale, guess what they say? New carpet, new windows. So the current seller didn't do it, but he's trying to cash in on it. The previous seller did it, you know. So it does, I always say, come from a position of knowledge. Don't just walk in the door and go, okay, what do you think? You know, it just always come from a position of knowledge. The other place you can find a lot of information is on the tax records. In Realist, if you pull the tax records up, you come down, page 2 or page 3, it will tell you who the previous owners are and what they paid for what the mortgage was on the property, not what they paid for it, but what the mortgage is. That's what I mean by snooping. You come from some place where you have information that your client doesn't.
That was like last week too. You go by the prior history, and you find out that somebody sold this house 2 years ago. I think they sold it for, $125,000. 2 years later, they want to sell it for $185,000, and there's really been no improvements put in it. since the the buyer 2 years ago. I said, I know this is a hot market, but I did some comparables in the area, and it was overpriced. And I talked to the agent, and they did not take our offer. Said we wrote a really very fair offer. And I said, well, can I have a back, can we use this as a backup offer? Because she goes, I'll think about it. She says, what these people don't understand, they're all excited because they got what they wanted and more. He says, but the house is probably not going to appraise it. So there's these little things you got to think about and stuff. And I don't want my people overpaid.
Yeah.
I want them to get fair market. I get just a good deal, fair market value. But I don't want them to pay that much over because if they go to sell it 2 or 3 years down the road, they're not going to get that money.
Not going to get it back.
Yeah.
Used to be we could look at our market appreciation at 3% per year. I mean, across the board, you could look at it and you could see 3% per year. The last probably 4 years, maybe, we've been as high as 16% appreciation. It's not back to 3%, but it is, I would say, maybe on the average around 10 to 11% right now. Yeah, it's pretty steady right now. And when I look at a house, my first thought is, like he said, if my buyer has to sell this house, gets a job change, something happens, they have a baby, whatever, within that 3-year window, are they going to get their money back? And you factor in what it costs somebody to sell a house. The first thing you're going to plug in is commission. And the next thing is taxes. And just do a backwards net sheet and just like, you know what? Like you said, it's going to be a tough sell in 3 years. You're going to be lucky to break even. And and I will tell them that. And then in the end, the decision's theirs. If you want to do it anyway, that's fine. We'll do it. But I want to make sure you get your money back too. I feel like that's kind of sort of my job, part of my job. And maybe I look at it too seriously and keep your mouth shut, but I don't want to be that phone call in 2 years or 3 years. Any lender will tell you theoretically the money it takes to close a house as a buyer. If you can't earn that money back in a 3-year window, you've no business paying that price. It's going to take about 3 years to make your closing costs back, if that makes any sense. You spend $10,000, your house isn't going to appreciate $10,000 until about 3 years down the road. So always start with the goal in mind. I always ask my clients, buyer and seller, what's your goal? Like my seller that we got the offer last night, I asked him, I said, how much do you want to walk away with? I know what they bought the house for because I sold it to them about 8 years ago. I know where they're going. They bought a villa in another state because he retired and she has some major health issues. So I know all of this about these people. And I said, what is your goal? What dollar and cents do you want to walk away with? And they wanted to walk away with enough money to cover all their moving expenses, the money for the new carpet they had to put in the house, and to pay off the condo that they bought in Michigan where they're moving to. Now I got it. I've got something tangible I can hear and I can listen to and we can talk about. When we got the offer last night, it's short of where they want to be. And it's like, okay, you can pay off your condo here and you're going to have this left, but it's not going to cover everything. And they have to be comfortable with it. That's not your decision. They have to make that decision. And you want to know what their desired outcome is and how is that affecting their decision moving forward. He had said to me, it's been slow the last couple of weeks, and we'd had a couple offers. We had one really solid offer, and it was a domino. The buyers were moving from another location, from St. Louis, and they had to close on their house in St. Louis before they could close on my listing. The house in St. Louis fell apart. So why did it fall apart? There's another lesson. It fell apart because the seller would not make a repair. When the seller says, I'm not going to do it, you just opened up the door for the buyer to walk out because they can walk out at no penalty the minute the seller says, I won't do that. And sometimes it's inconsequential, but again, you got to talk it through. But anyway, that fell apart, and that was a full price offer at $474. So now guess what? They're looking for another one at that same price, and we did not get one. So now it's like push back, push back, push back. So you've got to know what their desired outcome is, and helping them make that decision and put a wet blanket on the emotion, because he was really upset last night. It's like, what's the matter with our house? It's like, nothing's the matter with your house. We haven't had any showings in the past 2 weeks, but that's traditional for the 4th of July, because people go on vacation. Kids go to camp. It's just traditional. As soon as the 4th of July week is over, it'll pick right back up again. You watch it happen. Until he goes, oh, I never thought about vacations. Yeah. The same thing happens between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Other things take precedence. The same thing's going to happen at the end of August. Kids are going back to school. College kids are going back to college. You know, everything changes. People that are teachers are going back to teach. I mean, you have to know out there daily what the heck's going on out there, because it does impact our business. You need to know what boundaries need to be set in order to help them achieve their desired outcome. By boundaries, I have one lady right now that she sleeps till 1 o'clock. There's a boundary. We can't have any showings before about 1:30, 2 o'clock. That hasn't been easy, but we've managed, and I just have to appreciate her boundary where that is. There's people that have dogs. I lost a showing on a property because the agent's question to me, have there been cats in the house? And I have to say yes, they had 2 cats. Well, then we won't show it. If you have a client who's allergic to cats, they don't need to be looking at that house. In agent remarks, it's not a bad idea. I mean, I'll put in my remarks sometime, family pet needs day before notice, because that just like tells somebody there's an animal. If both parties work during the day and they got a critter in there, you're not going to have a daytime showing until they have somebody to take care of the animal or some way to do it. I tried to show a house a couple weeks ago, and there are no showings after 7 o'clock at night because they have small children and they want to put them to bed, you know. So somebody's tying your hand behind your back, but you're going to have to try to work with it. And how you communicate with them, always ask them how they want to be communicated with. Are you okay with a text? A lot of people aren't, older people especially. They don't get the texting thing. Probably if I wasn't doing this, I'd be in that category. You will find people that do email at work and do not do email at home. They have no use for email. So you need to know how to communicate. That, to me, that's a negative for things like DocuSigning, because you need an email address. But there's nothing wrong with picking up your paper and going to meet with somebody and getting a wet signature. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And it gives them a great deal of comfort if you can actually sit across the table and talk about the contract. It makes me feel good because I feel like I've actually explained it to them. Don't ever, ever, ever just shoot somebody a contract without talking to them about it and say, sign here. Ever, please. I'll put you in realtor jail if I ever hear you did that. Ever hear you did that. And one thing you have to learn to manage is your own emotion. Believe me, you have to manage your own emotion. I had just closed on one yesterday. Okay, they had a house to sell. We got their house under contract. They wrote an offer on another house. Everything was going along fine. 1 week before closing, she decides she doesn't want to buy that house. 1 week before closing. It's like, we sold your place. We are closing on your place in, I think, about 2.5 weeks, and you decide you don't want to buy that house. I mean, it's a wonder I did not squeeze my fat body through that phone at her that day. And I was like, okay, I'll see what I can do. And I hung up, because it's like, I really was at a loss for words, a total loss for words. And so first thing I did was call the other agent, and I said, this is the other agent, I said, hey, we got a problem. They don't want to buy the house. Her first words were, well, they're going to lose their earnest money. I said, I'm aware of that, and they should. They should. I said, I'm on your side here. You know, I wanted her to know that I wasn't going to fight this. There wasn't any point in it. So this is people's mental thinking sometimes. So you know what a ridge cap is on a roof? A ridge cap is the piece of roofing that comes all the way across the top, okay? We remember when we had the bad wind and everything? The ridge cap blew off, and it was laying in the backyard. So we have this inspection, and the inspector says the ridge cap is off the roof with possible moisture penetration into the attic space. That makes perfect sense. You got an opening going on up there. So, and she says to me, well, I saw that laying in the backyard, and I wondered what it was doing there. It's like, it blew off. What can I tell you? So then she says, this is the reasoning. This is a ranch home, ridge cap gone, possible water penetration into the attic space. And she says, well, when we walked in that house and it had all those water stains on the living room floor, and you said just throw an area rug over it, that came from that roof. And it's like, no, it didn't. It didn't come from that roof at all. There's something spilled on that hardwood floor, and that's why there's a water stain on the hardwood floor. You know, you look at the ceiling, everything's fine. There's this attic space between the ceiling and the, it's like, what are you thinking? She goes, well, I don't want the house. He said there's water in the attic, and that means mold, and I don't want the house. Well, now her emotions are so far into this that there's no way I'm going to be able to reason anything. So we just did a mutual release, and you're out of it. You're just out. Nope. I told him, you're not getting your earnest money. I mean, you will not. You walked away from a contract. Seller was willing to fix it, and she goes, I don't want that house. It's like, okay. I mean, don't argue with them. Just walk out. So I just kind of stewed about it for about 3 days. And I told a friend of mine that came as a referral, and I said, I'm this close to telling them to find another agent. I mean, that's a lot of work you put into something, and your emotions get in the way, because I saw it just walking out the door. And I just said, nah, we'll just see what happens. And I didn't call them. They finally called me, and they said, we've got another house we want to see. And if you want to show it to us. And I thought, I'll think about it. And I told her, I said, well, I can't do it today. Maybe tomorrow after about 4 o'clock. Okay. So they were finally kind of compliant. Anyway, we closed on the second house yesterday.
Let's just say they need a house if they're getting ready to sell their other one in about 2.5 weeks.
Well, but the same person, she said to me, the reason I'm telling you all this is because you will have this. This is exactly how this business works. She said, we closed yesterday. Yesterday was Tuesday. Sunday, she called me and she said, you know, I really need to go back and see that house because I really didn't take a good look at it the first time. And I thought, oh, hell no. It's not happening again. So I said to her, I can't possibly do it today or tomorrow, and we're closing on Tuesday. Oh, okay. That was the end of that. I'm not going to have it happen again. So we did. We closed on it. But this is how it goes sometimes, unfortunately. I don't want to put the fear of God in you, but I want to put the fear of God in you. Huh? No, and you know, I think the important thing to keep in mind is it's up to you to keep the level head. And yes, you do get emotionally involved. And yes, you do want to push back sometimes. And yes, you really got to bite your tongue sometimes. But the good times are great, you know, and you'll have that one transaction where everybody talks about it. And, you know, I have people that will say to me, I'm surprised you stuck with Shenandoah as long as you did. Yeah, I did stick with it because that guy was not going to get the best of me. But, you know, should I have walked away? No, it was fine. It was just him. You know, he tended to be abusive, and you just put your armor on and get it done. But you need to manage emotions. It's our responsibility to manage not only our emotions, but the emotions of the other agent. Oh, please. What's one of the questions I ask you, Steve, when you want to show a house or you're working with somebody?
One of the things you say to me, or what?
There is a list.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Who's the other agent?
yes.
Yeah. 36 years, and I know who the other agents are. There's a lot of new agents that I really haven't worked with, but some of the older agents that have been around a while, if you tell me who it is, both Jen and I could probably be kind of insightful in really how to kind of work with them. And there's a lot of them that they have trouble keeping their emotions in check. They do. And you really have to be the doubly hard one to keep your emotions in check. One of the things that I find very helpful is when your client tells you something, restate it back to them in some format to show that you heard what they said. You know, and I'll tell anybody play stupid sometimes. I'll say, I'm not sure I understand what you just said. Help me understand it. This is what I heard. You know, is this what you said? So restate it back to them. It's not judgmental. Don't blame and don't make assumptions on people. Agree on a common outcome with the other agent. You will find that I will ask another agent, what do you want to see happen here? Sometimes they push back so bad, your client's fine. Sometimes it's the agent that pushes back so bad. You know, what do you want to see happen here? We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to get this transaction closed. Why are you working so hard to make it not happen? You know, basically your seller wants to sell and your buyer wants to buy. As long as we're okay on that, we just have to make that happen. You are the middleman. And like the last night with my sellers, you have to give your client permission to negotiate. He didn't like the price to begin with, but he was afraid to say it. He didn't, and he even told me that afterwards. He said, I didn't want to come out acting like I was being greedy by saying, you know, something negative about the price that was so far away from the list price. He says, you're not being greedy. It's just not what you want. So where is it that we can make this work? And you have to give them permission, you know, to tell you that, to talk about it. One piece of advice somebody gave me a long time ago is to negotiate your transaction before you meet with your client. One of the things we have to do is a net sheet. It's in Cressy Docs and it's in IAR residential documents. And if any of you ever want to just sit down and do dot loop with me, you got to let me know and we'll hang out and just do dot loop and fool with it. Because without fooling with it, you really will never grasp it. You've got to fool with it. You know, pretend you're selling your own house and do all of the contracts. But anyway, negotiate the deal before you meet with your clients. You know, like just say the agent sent me the offer on the house. I got it at $852, I think it was last night. And I was just getting home. And I said to her, I have to get a bite to eat, and then I'll look at the contract. Again, I'm old, so what do? I print it because I don't do well on that thing. I like to have tangible, as you can tell, paper, and I make notes on it. You know, like I have a highlighter, and I highlighted the price, and I highlighted the agent's buyer broker commission, and I put stars by a couple things that were really good. And now I have an offer I know something about. So then I called the client and I said, I'm getting ready to send you an offer. Call me back after you have a chance to look at it so we can go over it. They live in another state. And that's what we did. But because I'd already looked at it and I felt a little better about it, that, you know, I get my plan of attack going here, so to speak. Yeah, don't just shoot it off, please. Don't assume that the other guy knows what he's looking at, because he does not know what he's looking at. Not at all. Again, knowledge is power. Know your market. You did the right thing when your gut was telling you, and go with your gut 90% of the time. Your gut was telling you, remember it was 792 square feet, wasn't it, the house? And what did I say to you? That's too small for that price. It was 792 square feet at $185,000. Yeah, that's kind of glaring. It can't be that price. Know your market. He did the right thing. He went to look to see what the rest of the market was like for that, in that area. What was selling? What were they selling for? Now you can come from a position of power. Now you can talk to your client like you know what the heck you're doing. On a listing appointment, if you're going out on your house that you've never been in, it's the only business where we go to somebody's home, somebody that we don't know, into a house we've never seen before. Do your homework first. Look them up on the tax records. Do the past history. See what's going on with it. Look at the neighborhood. Get in your car and go for a drive. Drive around through the streets. People will say, what kind of neighborhood is it? Go for a drive. Go through a neighborhood when kids are getting out of school. Go through a neighborhood at 7 o'clock at night. You go through my neighborhood at 4 o'clock and you won't see a body out there. But I live in an old person's villa community. But, if you don't know your areas, how can you adequately do a market analysis for somebody? It's not just pulling up the stuff on the internet and throwing numbers at them. You have to have a confident with the area. I ran into somebody last night and they said, well, we're putting new windows in our house and we're kind of arguing about what kind of windows, and my husband wants the grids only on the top, and I think we need grids on the top and the bottom. And she said, what do you think? It's like, not my windows, but I did say, in new construction today, the grids on the top are what they're doing with no grids on the bottom of the windows. If you look at your new construction, but that's the only information I have, I pay attention. This is what I know is going on. And I said, the other thing they're doing is they're painting trim black, and I would not do that because that's going to come and go. Shh, 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 shh. That's going to come and go. You remember mauve, don't you? Yeah.
I painted over all of that.
You'd walk into a kitchen and they had mauve countertops, mauve sink, mauve floor. It's like, oh God, I hate that color, but whatever.
Everything's gray and white now too. The floors are all
Yeah.
gray, it's white or an off-white paint, and
Where it used to be
silver.
browns before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Browns and beiges before.
Yeah.
It always goes in and out of styles.
But I like the look. I think it's crisp, but it's not going to last.
It's transitioning a little.
It's very trendy, huh?
It's transitioning a little bit. There's darker cabinets going in and not
You're right.
countertops. It's more gray,
Right.
greys and tan.
Yep.
Countertops darker.
Andrew?
I had a question, like when you said you were going through neighborhoods and it's maybe like sketchy neighborhood, how do you translate that to them?
I can't hear you.
Like if you're going through a sketchy neighborhood and you like are trying to like translate that to the buyers, how would you like say that to them without saying it's a sketchy neighborhood?
Oh, sketchy neighborhood?
Yeah.
They have to be careful. I mean, they have to be comfortable with it. We don't say anything like that. They'll ask you what the makeup of the neighborhood is. There's absolutely no statistic out there that you can send them to, because most neighborhoods are so transitional that, and where are you comfortable? I sell a few homes to Notre Dame grad students out of the theology department. They don't care where they live. They'll live anywhere. They love the inner city neighborhoods. They love that area, and they're perfectly happy there. Somebody else is not going to be happy there, no matter what. I sold, you know what a Sears kit home is? It was the coolest Sears kit home. And I sold one to a young single gal over on the west side off of Olive. And my friend said, what in the heck were you thinking taking her over there? It's a cool house and it's a cool neighborhood. The architecture in there is unbelievable. And she was crazy about this Sears kit house. It was an amazing opportunity. They have to be careful, be comfortable with it. Just because you're not comfortable with it, that doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't really mean a thing. Huh?
You just tell them to look at the neighborhood on their own time. You can't really suggest
No,
either way. how
no.
you feel.
Like I said, people will tell you how they live in their backyards, 100%. In the city of South Bend and the Mishawaka too, drive down the alleys within the city. You'll see how people live. It's all splayed out in their backyards. Their front yards are gorgeous and the backyards are trash city. And you can't control your neighbors. You really can't. You move in today and those guys move out tomorrow. They go somewhere else.
And they can go online too, the South Bend Police Department. They've got crime statistics there that's accessible to the public. And you can say, you can look at the neighborhood and kind of find out what's going on by the crime statistic. You don't have to, you're not saying any specific area or nothing, but you're pointing them to where they can get.
Well, they
that
always
story.
say be the source of the source.
Yeah, and another thing too, it's schools. You've got to be, really careful with schools. And you'll get into that when you do the fair housing.
Yeah.
That's probably the most popular fair housing violation that takes place right now is somebody, a realtor that's really high in a certain school system. You know, the best thing to do with those type of people is just say, well, what's your goals for your children? What are you trying to accomplish? You know, well, have you been to this high school? Have you went in, have you taken a tour?
Visit the schools.
Yeah, with schools, you know. So
Talk to the school principal.
Get them to, you know, research it themselves and they can come to a conclusion.
Yeah, it has to be their conclusion. My kids all went through the South Bend Community Schools. I mean, they all did wonderfully well. I mean, I wouldn't have traded it for anything. Your kids did too. They had every opportunity. I think that this is a real soapbox. Education starts in the home. You know, it doesn't start in the school system. Your school systems are not supposed to be your babysitters. You know, it has to start in the home. But anyway, yeah, he's right. Let your client make up their own mind. You know, tell them where to go for information. Maria upstairs, she had a listing over on Emmons Road in Clay Township, and every time somebody go to show the house, the next door neighbor would come over and politely tell her that there was a sex offender living on the other politely, yeah, living on the other side of that house. And she goes, I don't know what to do. I said, tell him to go to the sex offender website. You know, you can't say yay or nay, and the neighbor doesn't know. Maybe the neighbor just has a beef with these people. You know, yeah, and like John and Quinn are always saying, be the source of the source. Tell them where to go to get the information. It's not you saying, oh my God, yes, there's a sex offender over there. Tell them to go find that out for themselves. Maybe they'll tell you something you didn't know before. Knowledge is power. Negotiate in person if at all possible. There's a lot of benefit to negotiating in person. The best benefit is body language, folding your arms like this, how their eyes work, how they're paying attention. If they're like, they're not listening to you at all, Pay attention to body language. You can learn a lot about that, and their tone of voice. That's one thing that texting doesn't give you. I had a cross sale with Kent Guy up at Weikert about a year ago, and I sent him a text message. I don't even remember what it was about now, and accidentally, caps was on. He
Has sent me messages with caps on, and I'm like, oh my God, Fiat's mad at me.
He didn't respond. He called me and he goes, why are you yelling at me? It's like, I'm not yelling at you. What did I do? He goes, you had all caps on. So, yeah, a conversation would have been much better. I will tell any agent out there, I've told you before, pick up the phone and call somebody. Don't, when you have a cross sale going with an agent and you're just like, oh, I don't know, this is what she said, and yada, yada, yada. Pick up the phone. Call her. Call him. What can we do here? How are we going to make this happen? What's your client's wish? Don't be afraid to say, yeah, my client, I told somebody the other day, we're not quite there yet. You're a little bit short. What can we do to make that up? I didn't give them numbers or anything, but that's the truth. What can we do to make the difference? How can we make that happen? Pick up the phone and call somebody. Don't assume that they understand you, because you certainly aren't understanding them. And plus,
one of the best pieces of advice she gave me is, with all the newer agents in here, I've probably written more contracts than they have. Haven't sold anything.
but he's good at writing a contract.
But I've worded the contract real well. But if my contract gets turned down, I always call the agent and say, I've been in this business now about 6 months, and for my own education, where did we fall short on the contract?
That's a good point.
And they'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because sometimes, salespeople, you're kind of a me person. You think about you a lot of times. And the thing is, you're thinking, did I do something wrong here? Did I put something in that was stupid? What could I have done better to get my client this house? And sometimes there's nothing you could have done.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's a good point. When I lose in a competing offer, if I lose on a competing offer, I'll call the other agent. I'll say, what made the difference? And sometimes it's price. Sometimes it's like you were FHA and they were conventional, and you were conventional and they were cash. Sometimes it's nothing you could have ever overcome. But then you can take that back to your client and it kind of soothes them instead of just saying, hey, we didn't get it. We didn't get it because, a reason.
Well, and then they don't put that focus or blame necessarily back on you.
Right.
If you're not doing your job, it's,
Right.
a decision that they made with your guidance or,
Right. Right. I've got one under contract now, and they're sellers, also buyers, but they've been sellers. We have looked at so many homes, and we've written offers, I think 4 or 5 offers, but every offer had to be contingent on the sale of their home. Nobody's going to take a contingent offer in this market, and I kept trying to tell them, but I didn't want to say, we can't write an offer. The market told them that they couldn't write an offer because we kept losing out because we had to write a contingency. Finally, they got it. And I said, we can continue to look so you know your market, you're comfortable with your market, you know what's out there, but we're not going to write any more offers because it's just not going to happen. Find out what the other person's weakness is. By the other person, I mean if it's your buyer and you're trying to write an offer, find out what that seller's weakness is. What's important to the seller? Is it important that they stay 30 days after closing? Is it important that, like on your buyer, it might be important that they get into the house before school starts. Find out what somebody's weakness is. Not that you play on it, but you're coming from a position of power.
And where do you get that from? The other agent typically?
Well, I want to tell you that those other agents, and don't be this agent yourself, those other agents will tell you stuff that you probably shouldn't know. They will spill their guts as to what their client, what their needs or wants are. They'll tell you that, yeah, she just filed for divorce, and I mean, now you've got a whole bunch of stuff that you cannot really share. I mean, it's not right to share it. But if you ask the right questions, remember I said play dumb? Just say, tell me what I can use here to make sure my offer gets accepted. And they'll just spill their guts. Don't be that agent with your clients, but they will do it. But ask questions, find out what the other person's weakness is, find out what they want. What do they really want? If they really need to stay there, until I had one that the seller, we wrote the offer on the 17th of April, and they wanted to stay till the 1st of June. That's a long time. So we pushed closing out a little bit based on the lender and when the rate was going to expire and everything, so we were able to push it out a little bit. But we still had to give them, I think it was like 11 days possession. And we gave them 11 days possession at no charge. So now we look like a good guy. Instead of charging them $100 a day or something for staying there, we gave it to them at no charge. If you have an offer and a counteroffer, it's your seller, your buyer. You write me an offer, okay? It's not quite what my seller wants, okay? So this position, offer, seller, offer. Not quite what my seller wants, but my seller says, we'll go ahead and take their offer. Now that puts you in a losing position, if that makes any sense. Because my seller took less than they wanted, and now you come to us with repairs, we're going to say, we took your lower offer. We aren't going to do those repairs. But my seller writes you a counteroffer. Now you take our counteroffer. You have every right to say to my seller, no, we took your higher offer. That's not where we wanted to be. Now you will fix that. So sometimes if you win one place, you could lose somewhere else. And that's something you really have to take a hard look at sometimes. Especially if you know your listing and you know how old the roof is and you know what they've done and haven't done, you really have to know that. Do you get it? Yeah. So it's, whoever rises to the top sometimes loses. So determining what the other party's objections are and be prepared to present all the options. Objections could be, no, I don't want to leave the refrigerator. Some is, as dumb as that. I've got people right now that want to take their washer and dryer. It's going to cost them a fortune to move the washer and dryer. And the second part is, it can't go down the basement steps. I don't know what they're going to do with this washer and dryer. I picture it in the living room from now on, but that's what they want, that washer and dryer. So determine what their objections are and be prepared to present all options. You know, think of the options. What could we do instead? Just like the price wasn't where the seller wanted it, but the rest of it's good. What can we do about that? Never give up something without getting something in return. If the buyer gets the washer and dryer not currently offered, will the buyer give the seller more time to move? You know, it's kind of a trade-off sometimes. You know, if I give you my refrigerator, will you give me 2 days possession at no charge? It's kind of a trade-off. And ask what if. What if we don't get the price you want? What if they want the washer and dryer? What if you have to leave the refrigerator? You know, what if? Can you live with that? You get kind of have conversation, get them talking. You'll hear a lot and you'll be able to solve a lot of issues if we just all talk about it. Let's see, document everything. Document, 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 document. Everything. Your text messages, be sure to save them, move them over into whatever file you've got, however you want to do it. Save everything. If you ever get called on the carpet for something, having documentation is huge. A few of us in here sit on the state professional standards and the state grievance committee, and the people that have the best documentation usually win. And when you get further into it, I encourage all of you to volunteer for that. You will see things that people do that will curl your hair, and I could use a little curl. But you know, and sometimes it's like, how'd you even think of that? What made you think that would be okay? And it's amazing what some people will do. And be prepared to walk away. There's no shame in it. Absolutely no shame in it. And tell your buyer that, and tell your seller that. You know, just like yours, the offer didn't come up. Be prepared to walk away. It's not your house if it doesn't work out. It's hard to swallow. It's just like you have showings on your listing and they never write the offer. You know, the seller is like, what's wrong with my house? What's wrong with my house? It's not their house, plain and simple. You will get, on feedback, you'll get some really crazy feedback, like, it's sometimes the feedback, it makes me say, oh, that's an excuse. You know, well, I had one in Michigan in Niles, and it had Kelly green carpet in the living room, in the dining room, and the family room. You could see it in the pictures. You walk in the door, you can't miss this Kelly green carpet. And feedback was always, oh, the carpet, Kelly green carpet. I know it's Kelly green carpet. And in the photos, it's Kelly green carpet. Why did you look at it if you don't want Kelly green carpet, you know? So finally, I changed the remarks. I put perfect for Michigan State. Because it was that color green, believe me. But it wasn't the right house for people, you know, for somebody. You can always replace carpet. I know.
They can't put me on certain things, and that's something that they could easily.
Well, and that became an excuse. That's an excuse. Give me something concrete that I can use. That's just an excuse.
The paint color was always funny for me when we were selling our house, and someone's like, "Oh, well, I just didn't like the colors of the bedrooms." Like, how much does it cost to paint a bedroom? It doesn't cost hardly anything, right?
Yeah.
Even if it were
Right?
all white,
You were
most people would
probably
come in.
gonna come in and do something anyway, and it doesn't cost that much, and most people could do it themselves if you know, like. Okay,
Paint is the
so-
cheapest thing you can ever do.
Right?
Between paint and getting light fixtures at Menards and putting new faucets in.
or like
It's so
outlet
cheap.
covers or whatever. It's so cheap.
Yeah, it's so
crazy.
cheap.
I know. I was like, we have painted these rooms like 5 billion times while we lived here. I'm pretty sure you could paint it. If
Yeah.
You don't like it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a house out in Knollwood West listed for sale, and the feedback was, this is exactly feedback. Well, there were mouse droppings in the basement, and we watched a woodpecker fly through the hole on the side of the house. That's what I hear. It's like, what? What? Mouse droppings in the basement, and a woodpecker flew through the hole of the side of the house. I called my seller and I said, do you ever have trouble with woodpeckers? He goes, well, that's the neighbor's problem, but we've never had trouble with it. So I thought, I'm going to go take a look at this. Well, yes, there were mouse droppings in the basement. There was not a lot, but the house is vacant and it's heavily wooded. So, I mean, come on, critters are going to come in. I walked around the side of the house. I'm not kidding you. That hole had to be that big in the side of the house. I don't know what the heck flew in there, but I don't think it was a woodpecker. And then my brain goes, if he flew into the hole, where did he go? Because that's the master bedroom. Did he peck his way into the master bedroom and now he's flying around in the master bedroom? But anyway, that was my feedback. It's like, do you not realize that those can be taken care of? I mean, that's an easy fix. So, and be prepared to walk away. I will tell anybody, if it gets to the point where negotiation just is not working and you don't see it coming to a good end, don't be afraid to terminate it. Just don't be afraid. It's not supposed to happen. If it's like, what do they used to say, pulling something through a knothole, you're working way too hard at it. There's a reason it's not supposed to come together, you know. And one time I had, it no sooner fell apart than the seller lost his job. I mean, there was a very good reason why they were not supposed to sell that house and buy another house. We just didn't know it yet. Yeah. And the key to positive negotiation is ensuring both sides feel they have gained something. In negotiation, he who wins often loses, and that is very, very true. You often lose. Pay attention, develop your listening skills. Pay attention to what they say. Repeat it back to them. I understand that you don't want to give up this washer and dryer, but what if somebody wants it and they give you the price you want? What if the house you find that you fell in love with has the same washer and dryer? What if? That also is a key point in fair housing, that in fair housing, if, God forbid, you should ever get called up for a fair housing violation, but you have to prove that you ask everybody the same question. Like people will say, he talks school systems, they'll say, well, you know, I want this particular school system. Why do you want that school system? You know, do you have kids already? That's one of the questions I ask a family with children. Do you already have kids in school and do you want to stay in that same school system? You know, or are you willing to relocate? Find out what's important to them. And then you come from a position where you can at least work in their favor and say, I don't know, you know. So I had a family that had a handicapped child. Mishawaka Schools has a wonderful handicap program, amazing handicap program. And he was coming from, for Notre Dame from outside the area. And I gave them the information about Mishawaka Schools. I said, have you thought about Mishawaka Schools? Because I know, I have a friend who teaches special ed there, that they have this wonderful program. And he goes, well, no, we wanted this school system because we heard good things about it. Well, good things may not be for your child either. So they went over to Mishawaka, and surely that's where they wound up because their program is amazing over there. Find out what somebody's hot button is. I just relocated a family from St. Louis area, and they have a son that's a really budding soccer star. I took him out to the Mishawaka Field House to meet with the coach out there, who I just happened to know through the Chamber of Commerce. And he kept the kid all day long while we were looking at houses and had him running drills and working out. And I mean, it was like a slam dunk. The guy even said, he said, this was the best part of that trip because this kid was happy and found out something he loved and figured out there was, you know, space here for him. You'll find if you relocate people, there's what they call trailing spouse, which is if the husband's being relocated or the wife's being relocated, your spouse is called a trailing spouse. Find out what that person wants to do. Find out what their interest is. Don't just focus on this guy here. Find out what her interest is or his interest is or whoever it is, you know. And if you have to take a day and take them up to Lake Michigan, do it. It's well worth your time. And you'll make a friend, and you'll get a past client. You know, so your past clients will be your bread and butter as you get on in this business. You won't have to keep developing strangers. You want to pass this out? So one of the things you turn in when you have a purchase, this is on the buying side, when you have a purchase is your purchaser's inspection authorization. On the hub, which is where all the intercompany different things are, marketing things, and where you can post upcoming listing or a buyer looking for. There's multiple avenues on the hub. On the hub will be a list of vendors that we can use. If it's a vendor who belongs to the Board of Realtors, they have key box access. If it's a vendor who does not belong to the Board of Realtors, you have to let them in, and then you really should stay there while they're doing their inspection. Okay, it's precautionary, just in case something happens. So it's well worth it to use the affiliate members of the board. Number one, they pay to be there, so we try to support them. But there's a list on the hub of vendors. Wood destroying insect is a gimme on every property. Years ago, it used to be a mandatory inspection. Lenders required it. They haven't required it for about 20 years, but still, critters can cause a lot of damage in the house, and they can cause some pretty significant structural damage. I had a foreclosed listing over on Simonton Lake that I got from Wells Fargo, and the termites had come in through the master bedroom, the window area. It was cedar siding. They were up underneath, came through, the windowsill was gone on the inside of the room. The drywall, you could tell they were behind the drywall because they eat the paper on the drywall. What they did, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. They went up, they came across, chomp, chomp, chomp. Front porch ceiling fell down, chomp, 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 came down the garage wall. The entire structure of the house was eaten by termites. It was amazing, totally amazing. I've never seen anything so bad in my life. The house had to be destroyed because you couldn't redo it. But anyway, so you don't know if you got these critters in there without having a wood destroying insect inspection. So skip down to whole house, coming 3/4 of the way down. A whole house, good whole house inspector will look at heating and cooling, plumbing, electrical, roof. They won't really do fireplace and chimney because they're not qualified to do that. They will not do structural. Most of the whole house inspectors will do radon. They'll do a radon test. The radon level has to be below 4 to be acceptable. They don't do a survey, they don't do a pool, and very little lead paint testing do we do, very little. But it can be done. Or you can have the major components inspected, heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, roof. You need a separate inspector for the well if you have a well. You have to have a septic inspection if you have a septic. Standard water is a water test. VOCs mean volatile organic compounds. That's an additional test that you can have done, and then they test for nitrates. I've never had a test for lead in water, ever. And chimney falls with fireplace. Wood burners, the fire department will come look at for you, because there are requirements. But my point in giving you this is, it's just kind of a little bit of a tool, because your buyer has to say, these are the people I want for inspections. And then when you've got this paper now, when you get your inspection back and wood destroying insect, maybe it says no infestation, just write okay. I keep track on here of my inspections as they come back. And if it's not okay, I'll put like needs service or critters or chomp chomp or something to tell me that there's something there, you know. Like on the one with the mice. Yeah, there's probably mice in there somewhere. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It's a vacant house and you're in the woods. I'll put mice, and that's an easy fix. The same with the whole house inspection. I'll put that it needs, summary page needs review. You know, this is my tickle sheet for me to know what I have to do, and I keep track of them as they come in. Because let's say you have to have your inspections back in 15 days, and now I'm on day 15, and I still don't have the radon. Pick up the phone, call the radon guy. Where is my radon? Because remember, if you miss that date, you're in deep doo-doo. Sometimes you can't bail yourself back out of it. But if you have an agent on the other end who is agreeable, like if it was with me, I would say, what do you want to see happen here? We both want to sell this property. So let's get with the program and get it done. What do you need done? but you're gonna find another agent that is not gonna tolerate that. So don't let it fall through the cracks on you.